You don't want to live in a $5,000 gold world. This is one of the biggest financial moves in 500 years. And the question is, what or who is driving the price? China is dumping treasuries with both hands. This is asymmetric warfare on the part of the Chinese. The attack on Venezuela is an attack on China. The pending attack on Iran that could easily go nuclear, it's an attack on China. Donald Trump and Bibi are about to start and end World War III, and it will result in the destruction of Israel and the destruction of the United States financially. They're going to use nuclear weapons because it's the only way they can defeat Iran. The Chinese and the Russians are not going to put up with it. The question is, what happens then? There is a liquidity crisis in the world hidden behind the curtain. Billions of dollars are being wiped out literally every day. Something that's going to blow up very soon. And when it blows up, you're going to be able to hear it on Mars.
Where do you see us in 6 months?
Total chaos.
World War III is already happening.
This is a house of cards, and it is in the process of collapsing right now.
You're going to see an economic crash, the likes of which we've never seen.
Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Today, once again, it's been a couple years. We got Bob Moriarty on the channel, the founder of 321 Gold, a longtime outspoken voice in the precious metals and resource space, and the author of Nobody Knows Anything. That's kind of how I feel most mornings lately. Before the markets, he served as a U.S. Marine pilot in Vietnam, flying 800 plus missions, and he's credited with holding multiple international aviation records. Bob, last time I had you on, you warned me that if gold hit 5,000 too fast, you don't want to live in that world. That's a dangerous place. I actually told this to Salente because I thought it was him that had told me this, but I remembered it was actually you who said that to me when we spoke a couple years ago. Now we're in a world where gold is over $5,000, and it's kind of happened really abruptly. It surprised a lot of people. Tell us a bit about what you're seeing here. What is this indicating? And will there be a second order effect of all of this that a lot of people are not seeing right now? Who's on the other side of this trade?
Well, let me ask you a question. When you said that to Gerald, what was his response?
I think he just rolled with it. Because, you know, I mean, he does so many interviews that he probably thought that he had said that. And I think his sentiment is very similar. But I think it was, something along the lines of it's usually a barometer for unrest and chaos. And we should expect that a $5,000 gold price is accompanied with a lot of turmoil.
Strange enough, and I'm going to have to mark that down, that in hindsight, that was brilliant to say, because what I've got to say is, believe me, you don't want to live in a $5,000 gold world. And strange enough, even today, gold is up almost $200. But you raised a great question, and the question is, what or who is driving the price? Now, I'm sure you tracked Shanghai silver price. Right now, the Shanghai silver price is $131 an ounce, as opposed to $114 an ounce on COMEX. And I am the world's biggest contrarian, absolutely. I'm going to take credit for that. I'm contrary to everything. I even argue with myself. But
I can feel that. I do that all the time.
Well, I have the most interesting conversations with myself. Are you aware that it is not a sign of insanity to talk to yourself? Did you know that?
I would hope so, because if it is, then I'm in trouble.
Well, it is a sign of insanity if you answer yourself. But going back to your question, that was an excellent question. It's a question everybody should be asking. What exactly is driving the price of gold and silver today? And if you look at the price of silver in Shanghai and you look at the price of silver in COMEX, from a sentiment point of view, we should be seeing a top or a correction. We had the highest RSI on gold ever as of yesterday. And today, we've got gold $200 higher.
What's the RSI?
Chinese, the relative strength indicator.
Okay.
It has to do with the number of days and how much it's gone up. So we're seeing extremes in emotion, but we're not seeing extremes in terms of tops or bottoms. I believe this is asymmetric warfare on the part of the Chinese. The attack on Venezuela was not an attack on Venezuela. It was an attack on China. The pending attack on Iran that could occur any day now and could easily go nuclear is not an attack on Iran. It's an attack on China. And the attack on Canada is not an attack on Canada. It, too, is an attack on China. For the United States to tell Canada that they cannot have a free trade agreement with China is patently absurd. You just don't do that in geopolitical activity. So I think China is dumping treasuries with both hands. I know Japan is because of the unwinding of the Japanese carry trade. And I think they're just pouring the money into gold. And I will take credit for telling you years ago, you don't want to live in a world of $5,000 gold. We are going to see exceptionally bad and dangerous things soon. The price of gold, the price of silver are saying that hyperinflation is right around the corner. So let's go back to your new website. World Prepper.
Yeah,
well, I like that. I like that.
We're going to have to lock in that domain now that you said it. I'm sure exactly. It's probably already taken. But so who is, like right now, we're seeing the price of gold almost at parity. It's not quite backwardation at the time of making this video. But is there going to be a supply crisis with gold possibly? We've seen that with silver. Where it's looking like there's going to be a failure to deliver come the end of the month here, which could really drive the price. But what about gold? Is there going to be ultimately a scarcity in gold supply?
Well, interesting you say that because no one has asked that question as far as I know. And the answer is interesting because there's not going to be a supply crisis for gold, but there absolutely is a supply crisis for silver. 90 to 95% of all the gold ever produced is still above ground and in vaults, and all it will take to get it to move is price to go up. And $5,200 or $5,300 gold is a really amazing price. Silver, on the other hand, there have been about 50 billion ounces of silver produced, and there's a few billion, nobody actually knows the number, a few billion ounces above ground. But silver, it's not recycled or stored, it's consumed. And the deficit, the difference between the production of silver and the demand for silver, there's been a substantial deficit for literally 20 or 30 years. The increased demand for silver, for electronics, for solar cells, for solid-state batteries, there is truly an increase in supply, but silver does not respond. Silver mining doesn't respond to price increases because most silver is produced as a byproduct. So while they share a common ground in terms of being excellent forms of money, as commodities, they're treated totally different.
With respect to the silver trade, there's people obviously who've been shorting the market. Who is on the other side of this trade? And could it actually be something that cascades into a full-blown market collapse? Because somebody's losing a lot of money right now. And I think people are still trying to short it. Could this potentially be what knocks the house of cards down?
Well, it didn't start it. I think that what did start it was the change in the value of the yen and the unwinding of the yen carry trade and the explosion in bond yields in Japan, which has fed over into the U.S. bond market. But absolutely, if you want to see who's short silver, you need to make a visit to a cemetery.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right. They're probably not doing too well right now. But how could that potentially lead to an unwinding of the system? Because I remember back in 2021 when people were shorting GameStop and they were shorting all these speculative companies, and then the GameStop brigade or the Reddit crowd, they rallied and they went into these stocks that were heavily shorted. And then right after that, the market sort of tanked about, 35%. The NASDAQ went down. And I wonder if we're going to see something similar here, that these people who are on the other side of this trade, if they get fleeced, then they're going to have to be taking, and selling stuff from elsewhere. And that could disrupt the whole balance of the market, it seems.
I think it's going to be worse than that. Now, the COMEX has continued to raise margins, and everyone is confused by margin. The purpose of margin is not to affect the price of silver. The purpose of margin is to protect the intermediary. If you go back to 1998, when the Russian crisis blew up, Lynn-Waldock was a major commodities trading firm, and they got caught with a lot of customers who couldn't cover their shorts, and Lynn-Waldock ended up having to eat them. And they actually were something like $500 million underwater, and they kited checks. Every quarter, they would write a check just before the end of the quarter. And as soon as they were in the new quarter, they'd tear the check up. Well, they wanted to take the company public, so they bring in auditors. The auditors say, hey, wait a minute. You guys are short $500 million. What's the story here? So Lynn-Waldock actually ended up going bankrupt. One of the things that nobody's talking about, and they should be talking about, is counterparty risk. Today, gold's gone up $200. Now, a contract is only 100 ounces. But $200 times 100 ounces is a lot of money. The value of a silver contract now is over $500,000. So when it changes 5 or 10% a day, you've got these massive changes. And I was kind of making a joke saying, if you want to see where the shorts are, you need to go visit the cemetery. And the purpose is these people are dead. Now, let me give you an analogy. Let's pretend the Cascadia Fault and the San Andreas Fault have an earthquake, and California falls into the ocean tomorrow and totally disrupts the economy of the United States, and silver goes up $100 an ounce in one day, and you have one call on silver. And the call covers 500 ounces of silver, and silver has gone up $100 a day. How much money do you make?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Here's what's crazy. It's a simple answer. You don't make anything. You don't make anything because whoever's on the other side of the call would have to come up with $500,000 in margin. They haven't got the money. So the intermediary would be short, and the intermediary is not going to pay for it. We're very familiar with market risk. Market risk is, I think gold's going to go up, so I'm going to buy a call, or I'm going to buy a contract, or I'm going to short it, or I'm going to buy a put. Market risks exist, and everyone understands that, but they don't understand if the market moves too high, too fast, the counterparty risk can easily be greater than the market risk. And I think that's exactly what's happened. And I think you understand intuitively how dangerous this is. Billions of dollars are being wiped out literally every day. There is a liquidity crisis in the world hidden behind the curtain, but you can look at the repo market. The banks are running to the repo market to get overnight liquidity, and something that's going to blow up very soon. And when it blows up, you're going to be able to hear it on Mars.
When do you think this is going to happen? At what point? Where's the tipping point? Is it 5,500? Is it 6,000? Is it $150 silver? Is there a point when the system just breaks and these people on the other side of the trade go bankrupt, or the intermediaries go bankrupt? And then what sort of effect, what does that look like?
Well, here's where it's interesting. I saw yesterday as being a very critical day, because from a purely sentiment point of view, we should have had a top in gold and we should have had a top in silver. Now, not an all-time top, but the sentiment says with moves like this, parabolic moves, you should have corrections in a healthy market. Mm-hmm. But when I get up today and I see Shanghai silver at $131 and I see silver at $114, I go, wait a minute. Okay, there has been a sea change, and it's an exceptionally dangerous sea change. I'm not smart enough to tell you when it's going to blow up, but I am smart enough to tell you it's going to blow up. It cannot possibly survive this. This is one of the biggest financial moves in 500 years. This is the destruction of the Western-based debt system. And everybody in BRICS see it. The Chinese see it, the Indians see it, the Brazilians see it, the Canadians see it, the Russians see it, but the United States doesn't see it.
What does that look like for the average person who doesn't hold gold or silver?
Well, I should have come to your website a year ago. A year ago. I mean, here's what's crazy. You and I have been preaching the same bullshit for years, okay? Mm-hmm. And we've been getting ignored for years. And I've had 100 guys go out on chat boards and say, yeah, Moriarty says the system's going to crash, but it hadn't crashed yet, which is true. Well, it's crashing right now. It was forecast. Your entire site is dedicated at warning people to prepare for bad times ahead. Those who have prepared are going to do well. Those who have ignored you and ignored me are basically screwed. We're going to have hyperinflation, and things are going to get far worse than people can imagine. And my comment about you don't want to live in a world of $5,000 gold is going to look smarter and smarter and smarter. People had the opportunity. If they took it, they're going to be in good shape.
This is why it's so important to be contrarian, right? Because throughout this period of irrational exuberance over the past several years, with the markets hitting high after high, and Trump today, who is going on about the S&P 500 reaching $7,000, as if that's not really just more indicative of a market melt-up. I mean, this is why it's so important to do almost what the opposite of the market was doing. And this is why we were talking about exactly what you said, for the longest time. Now, we're seeing civil unrest start to take root. Nobody's really relating it to socioeconomics, but, what's going on in Minnesota, and even to an extent, what's going on everywhere. I mean, the people are starting to fight, whether it's identity politics or immigration issues. And it seems to me to be a convenient red herring that as we are coming over the $5,000 plateau, that now people are fighting with one another, and the elites are promising us, don't worry, AI is going to make everything better. Just hang in there. And it starts to really look dystopian when you think about it.
Absolutely correct. And you just picked out another pin in the hand grenade that someone has already pulled. The whole AI thing is financial stupidity, okay? And it is going to blow up, period. There are shares that are so absurdly overpriced. So you're absolutely correct. The stock market is having a run higher, but when that run higher ends, and when the U.S. Treasury market blows up, and we're about 0.5% away on the 10-year yield, when the Treasury market goes no bid, it's going to be obvious to everybody. But all of the pieces are in play right now for total financial chaos. What I've been saying for years, and I think the price of gold at 5,200 or 5,300 is absurd. But I've said for years that the purpose of gold and silver is to act as an insurance policy against financial chaos. We are there right now. And I just read something by Tommy Costa today, and he made a very convincing argument that if you wanted to back the U.S. dollar with gold to cover the debt and the amount of currency outstanding, you would have to have $75,000 gold. Wow.
That is crazy.
And he makes the absolute point that in terms of history, that would be a reasonable number. So if you think that living in a world of $5,000 gold is dangerous, wait until you're in a world of $75,000 gold, because you're going to have $100 a gallon gasoline. We are just absolutely on the verge of hyperinflation. And strange enough, you don't want to have chaos when you've got a country with 400 million guns. While I agree that the illegal immigration problem needs to be solved, I think the way ICE and Donald Trump is trying to solve it is very dangerous. And they're to the point now they're just shooting people. And sooner or later, people are going to start shooting back.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think about. Where is all this money coming from? Because the bond market is pretty large. It's something like $60 trillion. The stock market, I don't know how many trillions of dollars, but that money's still in there. So where's all this money that's pumping up the price of gold and silver? I mean, it's coming from the Japanese carry trade undoing, as you indicated.
Absolutely.
But is there other places that? Is there anywhere else that you think? And if the bond market does, like if the Fed really does aggressively start cutting rates, I mean, doesn't that mean that the prices are just going to keep going higher?
Yeah, exactly. The hedge fund managers are now suggesting a 20% allocation to precious metals. And the actual amount of money spent on precious metals is something under 2%. I think it's about 1.5%. So we could absolutely have an explosion higher. But here's the key. We do not have an honest economy. You cannot have an honest economy with dishonest money. The United States was at its richest when it was on a gold standard, when the money actually meant something. And we got away from that in 1933 and then in 1971. And we don't have money now. We just got pieces of paper. Mm-hmm. And what's happened is that manufacturing has gone from about 30% of the U.S. economy to under 10%. And shuffling pieces of paper has gone from under 10% to over 30%. We need to go back to producing things that people want. And the only way you can do it is to have honest money. And it's going to take a giant change, and it's going to take 30 years to do. But the very first thing you have to do is go back to honest money. And I think that's exactly what the Chinese are forcing right now, is a gold standard.
So you think we're going to go back to like a promissory note system, and the gold is going to be revalued by the U.S. government?
Here's the problem. Governments all think they're powerful, but most of it's an illusion. Okay, Stephen Miller has been the biggest fan in the world of pushing illegal immigrants around. And now people are pushing back. So the administration is in a circular firing squad, and they're literally trying to shoot each other because nobody wants to take the blame for these people who were no threat to anybody being killed in literally cold blood. This nurse that was shot recently, the ICE had disarmed him, and then somebody screamed gun, and two guys pulled out their guns, and they shot him 10 times in his back. Now, that was not law enforcement. That was murder. I agree he should not have taken a gun to a protest, because you're dealing with some really erratic people who work for ICE. But ICE is totally out of control, and people are very angry. We need to do something about immigration, but Congress has had the ability for 30 years to change citizenship rules, and they haven't, and now we're paying the price for it.
Yeah, if you ask me, it seems like a largely contrived situation to take attention away from what's going on right now, which is the big money has been buying gold all the way up. They've been suppressing it in the media, and now they're only talking about it because, 5,000 is a flashy headline. But up until this point, they've been secretly accumulating it. They haven't wanted to draw attention to it, because if all the retail crowd piled into the market, that would create too much, demand pressure and raise the price even more. So, Ray Dalio, a lot of people have been talking about it, but it hasn't really, occurred to the average person. Do you think that we're still in a euphoric phase? Is it feeling kind of toppy? I've had a couple of guests recently who said, well, it's a little bit toppy. I'm selling a little bit. Or do you think that things haven't even started yet?
On April 25th of 2011, that's when silver just about touched $50 an ounce. The premium on the spot silver ETF, the PSLV, was 26%. So people were willing to pay $63 an ounce for silver that they could go down to a coin store and buy for $50 an ounce. That was an extreme in emotion, and I said so, and I said this is a top, and it was a top. Now, what's really interesting is that 2 days ago, we had a record high of $117 and change, somewhere around there in silver. The PSLV was selling at a 6% discount the same day. It was showing a bottom. It wasn't showing a top. Now, I'll raise something. You just mentioned the magic word, and that is this some kind of cover-up for something else? Donald Trump went crazy starting in early January. We invaded Venezuela. We kidnapped the head of Venezuela and his wife, but we didn't really change anything. We seized a bunch of oil tankers, but we didn't really change anything. He's got an armada moving into the Middle East in preparation for attacking Iran. He wants to attack Cuba. He wants to attack Nicaragua. He is attacking Canada. Something happened. Something changed Donald Trump. And it happened between Christmas and New Year's. He had a visitor.
I had a feeling you were going to go there. Yeah.
Had a visitor from the Middle East named Bibi Netanyahu. And Bibi Netanyahu has been on trial for corruption for 5 years. And I think that if they actually sat him down and had a judge and had a jury, I think there's a pretty good chance he would be convicted and he would be sent to jail. But they can't send him to...
And just to interrupt you, they just postponed that once again just a few days ago.
Yeah, well, they've been postponing it for 5 fucking years. Okay, yeah. Donald Trump has said, hey, you need to drop charges against this guy. But Bibi Netanyahu is a very smart guy. Every time he feels pressure because of these charges, you got any idea of what he does?
He starts a war?
Thank you. It is that easy. Now, it doesn't make any difference whether it's Hamas, doesn't make any difference whether it's Hezbollah, doesn't make any difference if Iran, doesn't make any difference if it's Lebanon, doesn't make any difference if it's Syria. He just starts a war. And the beauty is it gets the attention away from his crimes. So he sat down with his boy and he owns and operates Donald Trump. What do you think he told Donald?
Well, he probably said something to the extent of, the stars are aligned, the proxies are heavily battered and bruised, and it's probably time to do the Iran play.
But no, that's just part of it. He said, look, here's the deal. Okay, when you're getting a bunch of pressure because of something you're going to lose, all you're going to do is start a war. Now, what have we not heard a word about since that meeting between Bibi and Donald?
Russia, Ukraine?
What is the law that 99.5%, there was one representative who voted against this and 100% of the Senate, and the law was passed and signed by Donald Trump, giving the DOJ and the FBI 30 days to release what?
Oh, the Epstein files.
Ah, damn. Did you say Epstein? Are you on TikTok?
Well, not anymore,
No,
because TikTok's getting heavily throttled right now. But
really?
Well, yeah, because it just got bought by Oracle. So, now they're heavily censoring it. But anyway, sorry to distract from the point you were trying to make there.
If you want to have fun, go TikTok and put in the word Epstein. And guess what's going to happen? According to community rules, you have been censored. Okay? Israel now controls the communication ability of TikTok. Okay, through David Ellison. But what happened, and I think it's a lot bigger deal than anybody realized, the whole thing about Venezuela, about Cuba, about Canada, about Nicaragua, about Iran, all had to do with Epstein. The head of the Department of Justice has released 1% of the Epstein files. Now, when I was in Vietnam, we were flying over triple canopy jungle. We couldn't see what was happening underneath us. But there were some areas that we fly over, and all of a sudden, everybody in the world was shooting at us. And what we realized was that they shoot at you the most when you're right over the target. Now, there's a reason the DOJ has only released 1% of the Epstein files. And that has to do with Donald Trump. So the Attorney General of the United States is violating a law that Donald Trump signed. But she works for him. And she would release it unless he said, okay, I'll sign the bill. Don't you dare release it, which means Donald Trump is all over those files. And the best way to get people to focus on other things is to start a war.
Yeah, and that would also potentially carry over and possibly postpone an election. I mean, if there was a major war and a crisis at home as a result of that, this could be used as a grounds to say, well, we got to postpone elections. But then again, if the Epstein files were unredacted, wouldn't that also implicate a lot of Democrats at the same time? So it's not like,
well, the Democrats have the ability. They could have released it. Of course. I'll tell you, there would be a revolution tomorrow. There were 10,000 hours of video. We know exactly who was doing what. Now, the beauty of the 10,000 hours of video, those are stored in two places. They're stored in Washington, D.C. in the vaults of the FBI, and they're stored in Tel Aviv in the vaults of the Mossad. There would be a revolution tomorrow. There were hundreds of young women and underage women who were literally raped. And we know who did it, and nobody's been charged. Not a single predator has been charged. And I'll be candid. I mean, Donald Trump's the guy who's very famous for saying that 12-year-old girls were too young, but 13 was okay. Wait a minute, Donald. How do you know?
So with respect to Bibi then, and getting back to the Middle East, why doesn't the Israeli government, the deep state there, why don't they just grant him immunity? Like there must be still a functioning justice system there. That's the implication, that there is still somebody there who respects the law and wants to see this guy prosecuted. I think Donald Trump even brought that up, like we should grant Netanyahu immunity, and maybe that will cause him to relent a bit in his pursuit to try to create.
Strange enough, that's the greatest argument against more military chaos in the Middle East. It's a good question, and I can't really answer it. But some of the people realize, say, wait a minute, this is too much corruption. We need to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump has come out and said, yeah, I mean, give the guy a pass. He's no more dirty than I am, which happens to be true.
So what do you think is going to go down in the Middle East? Like, what is Trump's plan here? Is it to do a naval blockade? Is it to, like, what, you've obviously been in war, you flew 800 missions. Obviously, the technology has changed a little bit, but the strategy is still the same. What is this going to look like?
We took all of the power of the United States, and I think arguably it would be accurate to say the United States had the strongest military in the world from, say, 1964 till 1975 when the war ended, and we could not defeat a country of 40 million people. Now, let me give you one of my trick questions that everybody hates, but they're so simple. If people will learn to ask the right question, they don't need to listen to experts. Israel is a country of 9 million people. 7.5 million are Jewish. Iran is a country of about 90 million people. How does a country of 9 million people that is nuclear armed militarily defeat a country of 90 million people that is not nuclear armed?
Well, barring some major advances in AI and Palantir sci-fi technology and discombobulators and whatnot, I would have to say their only option is nuclear.
Thank you. It is that easy. However, they want to be victims. They're the most wonderful victims in the world. They're victims of everything and everybody. Everybody hates Jews because they're Jewish. They love being victims. They're always victims, which happens to be bullshit, by the way. They want Iran to respond. Now, I don't give a shit what Donald Trump does. He's got B-52s, he's got B-2s, he's got F-35s. Those are the equivalent of the same kind of weapons that we had in Vietnam. I flew probably 15 missions controlling the battleship New Jersey. It fired the biggest single weapon the United States had, which was 16-inch guns. Okay, so I have used the biggest non-nuclear weapons that the United States possessed. And of course, we lost the war. We got our ass kicked. The United States can go in with their carrier. They can go in with squadron after squadron after squadron of airplanes. They could kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of Iranians. What they cannot do is defeat Iran. And what Iran is going to do as soon as the United States fires the first round is they are going to unload hundreds or thousands of missiles and drones on Israel. And what's Israel going to do then?
Well, that would be their casus belli, presumably for the use of nuclear weapons.
And they will take out Tehran, and they will take out the oil fields. Now, the reason they can get away with that is because they've gotten away with cold-blooded murder for almost 80 years. Okay, you could see it daily in Gaza. You could see it in Lebanon. You could see it in the West Bank. The Israelis have this incredible arrogance that says we can do anything we want. We control the world. They're going to use nuclear weapons because it's the only way they can defeat Iran. And the question is, what happens then? And I can assure you it's going to be an ugly, ugly thing because the Chinese and the Russians are not going to put up with it. I believe that the Israeli actions and the U.S. actions, Donald Trump and Bibi, are about to start and end World War III, and it will result in the destruction of Israel physically and the destruction of the United States financially. The Strait of Hormuz, give me a squad of Marines, give me 13 Marines, and give me a 6-by truck loaded with munitions. I'll shut the Gulf of Hormuz. You could do it with a Girl Scout troop. They will shut off oil to the world, and it will stop the world's economy. And it would be a simple thing to avoid, and that is go to a two-state solution. And Israel start pretending they're a good neighbor instead of the biggest monsters in the Middle East.
And do you think Trump is aware of this eventuality, or is this something that is, I mean, I think he's just kind of being shuttled through all this. I couldn't imagine. I can barely keep up with things and keep all the balls in the air. I can't see Trump being able to see all these angles, especially considering he was a draft dodger.
Well, it's a funny thing you said that. I mean, here's this guy who's the most military aggressive president we've had in years, and he was a draft dodger. Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and George Bush and I are roughly contemporaries. George Bush was a draft dodger, Clinton was a draft dodger, and Trump was a draft dodger, and I wasn't smart enough. But subtlety is not in his vocabulary. And no, I don't think there's anybody smart enough in this administration. They would never allow anybody like me to speak up in a meeting. Miller is shithouse rat crazy. Wiles used to work for Israel. Israel owns Congress, they own the Senate, and they certainly own Donald Trump. And whatever Bibi Netanyahu wants to do is going to happen. And the really funny thing is, it's not Israel that wants to start World War III. It's Bibi Netanyahu.
And so what does Russia and China do then? Like, I'm of the persuasion that if they were to do a strike or to try to create some kind of blockade of just Iranian ships, that China would have to do something because, of course, they don't want the Strait of Hormuz closed either, because that would be very bad for them. That would cause hundreds of dollars a barrel for oil, and it would likely cause as much economic strife for their own population as it would the United States. Would they make a play in Taiwan in that situation? And what happens with Russia, Ukraine then? You could maybe answer if you want to provide your opinion on those questions separately.
If China wanted to take Taiwan, all they would have to do is fire a couple of hypersonic missiles on the chip-making capability of Taiwan. That is the heart of the Taiwan economy. I don't think that Taiwanese are stupid. I think that Taiwanese are eventually going to say, wait a minute, why are we screwing around with people who are our people? Now, it is still the policy of the United States government that Taiwan is part of China. And of course, Taiwan is part of China. So I don't think I don't see China invading Taiwan, but I do see them having a very serious heart-to-heart with them. But what China and what Russia do about Israel is the real question. And I think there would be a blockade on Israel immediately. And Israel would be told, we either turn you into a 6-foot thick sheet of glass or you disarm and learn to have manners. I don't think Russia and China are going to put up with Iran being attacked with nuclear weapons. And I'll tell you, it's so easy to see from a military point of view. I believe the reason the United States attacked Iran last year is Donald Trump was threatened. And Israel said, we're going to either use nukes or you can get involved. There was no reason for the United States to get involved. The United States isn't threatened. The absolutely daft thing is, and the Christie, the head of the National Intelligence Agency, came out a few weeks before and said 17 U.S. intelligence agencies all agree Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program. Mm-hmm. And they've never had a nuclear weapons program since 2003, and we know it. And now the excuse is, well, they've killed 30,000 demonstrators, which is absolute rubbish. But they did capture 800 Mossad agents, and they've got them sitting in prison, and they're threatening to hang them. So the United States said, well, you can't hang these demonstrators, these peaceful demonstrators. The Iranians did an excellent job of rolling up the Mossad agents who were in Iran to stir up trouble. There were hundreds of police and dozens of literally children killed in cold blood because the Mossad agents were trying to stir the Iranians up. So, yes, there were people killed in Iran, but they were killed by the United States CIA and the Israeli Mossad. And while that's tragic, that's not a reason to invade or to attack Iran. Part of what the United States is demanding is that Iran end its ballistic missile program. And the interesting thing is every country in the world except one has some kind of ballistic missile program, and that country would be Costa Rica, which doesn't even have an army. So the United States is making demands that cannot possibly be accepted and threatening a country that is no threat to the United States whatsoever. I mean, does anybody even pretend that Iran is an enemy of the United States? Iran didn't do anything to us.
Yeah, they've never actually done it. It's a surprise to a lot of people when you tell them that the Iranians have never did any sort of terrorist attack on U.S. soil.
Well, they haven't attacked anybody, I think, in 300 years.
I mean, there's an argument that they may be involved in, proxy asymmetrical attacks, guerrilla attacks on
Wait a
Israel and
minute.
things of that nature.
You mean like NATO and the United States? Are you suggesting the Iranians are doing the same thing that we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a chicken and the egg type conundrum because, of course, the Israelis will say, well, they were attacking us with our proxies and they had a hand in October 7th. But then, of course, that story goes back and back and back. What do you think? So is this what gold is really pricing in? Is this what silver is pricing in? Or has that even been priced in yet? Because looking at the price of oil, it doesn't look like people think that the Strait of Hormuz is going to get closed. I mean, I could have never imagined we would be in a situation where we would have already seen military intervention in Iran, and we have an armada being sent there by one of the most hawkish presidents that we've had in some time, and that the price of oil would be below $65 a barrel. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
I think you're right. I think the price of oil today is $62 a barrel, and that absolutely does not indicate a consensus that oil is going to go higher. But the interesting thing is, I think the price of gold and silver has far more to do with the demise of the Western debt-based system that the BRICS countries see and the West does not see whatsoever. The West is bankrupt. Germany's bankrupt. France is bankrupt. The UK is bankrupt. The United States is bankrupt. I think the latest numbers I've seen says the United States debt, federal debt, is going up $1 trillion every 80 days. And that's just simply not sustainable. If you know that's true, and if you know you've got an administration and a Congress that are spending money like drunken sailors, you know there is going to be a collapse. When you go into a store and buy a balloon, it doesn't make any difference if it's a big balloon or a little balloon. If you keep blowing into it, you know exactly what's going to happen. And that's where we are now. The debt-based system of the West is collapsing, and we don't want to admit it, but we're going to wake up to it one day. So the price of oil, I don't think it's connected to the price of silver or gold. I think the price of silver and gold have far more to do with the Japanese carry trade and the Japanese bond market and the U.S. bond market. But it's interesting that we've got $62 oil with a aircraft carrier within striking range of Iran.
Yeah, and especially seeing as the precedent has already been set for an attack. So we're potentially looking at then, because if the price of oil goes up, that's going to make whatever progress has been made on the American financial front with respect to lowering gas prices and leading to a little bit less inflation, still inflation, but perhaps not as much. It's been largely what's been keeping the real inflation suppressed is cheap oil. But if that, lid comes off, then we're talking about recession, depression, and I think the civil unrest that we're seeing now in Minnesota, it really starts to look a lot like a experiment, like a trial run for preparations for the whole system to come undone if and when, oil goes up and the markets just can't absorb that, and it just leads to socioeconomic chaos. At least that's how I'm seeing this through. I don't know. What do you think about that?
You've raised a really good point, and we haven't talked about this. I believe that all the chaos in Minnesota and Portland and San Francisco and LA, I think it's all deliberate. It's as simple as Charlie Kirk. When you look at the Charlie Kirk assassination and how many strange questions there are about it, there's something going on behind the scenes, and it's very hard to identify just who it is. I know that Soros is writing checks like crazy to the demonstrators. And while I sympathize with the demonstrators, at the same time, I believe the goal of getting rid of the illegal immigrants is a worthy goal. That's what Trump was elected based on. Is people were tired of millions of people brought in being subsidized by the local governments in the United States and totally out of control. I have seen numbers that the Somali fraud in Minnesota is as high as $18 billion. And it's just absolutely awe-inspiring to me. And nobody in government noticed. Please don't tell me that there's not somebody behind that. There is somebody behind that. There has to be.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you see like all of this playing out then? I mean, obviously we're going to see the metals keep going up. We're going to see oil keep going up. What about like if we were to play this tape 6 months in advance, where do you see us in 6 months?
Total chaos.
That doesn't sound good. Could you elaborate?
No. That's exactly what I predicted the last time we talked. Total chaos. Those who own gold at lower prices are going to be fine. People who bought silver at lower prices are going to be fine. People who stocked up on food or energy, they're going to be fine. And the rest of the people are kind of shit out of luck. I can warn people, and you can warn people, but the adage of you can lead a horse to water, you just can't make him drink. Those who are unprepared are going to pay for their sins. I see hyperinflation. I see the banks closing. The banks have to be in really bad shape right now because of the margin calls on silver and gold. When you get gold moving up $200 in a day, you got people being murdered financially, and it's all going to feed through the banking system. So while the Federal Reserve has the ability to lower short-term interest rates, they do not have the ability to lower long-term interest rates. And I see long-term interest rates going up. I see inflation going through the roof. And I see hyperinflation as very potential. And civil disorder. Donald Trump and his buddy Stephen Miller are talking about invoking the insurrection rule, the clause of the Constitution, and that could easily start a civil war.
Yeah, a whole lot of things are about to come to a head, it seems. Where can people learn more about what you do? And I know you're doing these interviews all the time. I see you on YouTube all the time. But where can people find more information about your point of view?
Well, here's what's really funny. Now, I'm not sure if you read any of my books. My mother taught my twin brother and I how to read before we started school. So when I started school, I knew how to read then, and I read pretty much 200 or 300 books a year. And when you read that much, it makes it really easy to write. Now, there are lots and lots and lots of writers who are better writers than I am. However, I'm very prolific, and I write across a wide range of subjects. So I've written about being in the military. I've written about delivering airplanes all over the world. I've written about a couple of financial books. And I've written some short fiction that I think is very funny. So if they go to Amazon and they look at the books, they'll see there's a wide number of books. And some of the books, like Nobody Knows Anything, I wrote, God, easily 10 years ago. And it's more rational, more logical, a better read today than when it was brand new. And I'd say, don't listen to the gurus and don't listen to the experts, because nobody's an expert. Learn how to think for yourself and learn how to be a contrarian. Some of the things that are going on, I've made the comment in the past that 100% of what the government tells you is a lie. If you want to know what's really going on, listen carefully to the government and then invert it, because everything they say is a lie. They don't ever tell the truth. So people have access to more information than they have ever had in the world, in the history of the world, but they still want to believe in gurus and they still want to believe in experts, and they don't need to. People are going to have to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet and make decisions for themselves. And that would be a good thing for the world.
Well, I'm going to post some links to those books in the comment section below. And it's been great having you out today. We're going to have you back at 6,000 if we still have an internet connection at that time, which is not guaranteed.
Wait. My time at 6:05, 6,000 gold. I think that's Thursday.
Yeah, at this rate, I would not be surprised. It's bittersweet at this point. I look at the price and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty exciting, but it also is a bit of a harbinger for what potentially may come. But Bob, I want to thank you for coming out today. It's always great to have you on, and yeah, just take care and keep on stacking and prepping.
Well, thank you for everything that you have done, because for years you have tried to warn people and give them the tools they need to not only survive, but to thrive. And I think that Canadians, I just wish you did this for the world. I think the idea of world prepper is a lot better than Canadian prepper. I think you should let the Americans into the secret.
I think so too. I'm actually strongly considering it, believe it or not. Once I get beyond this brand, then we'll be looking to broader horizons. Thanks a lot, Bob. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And you had some great questions.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.